Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook.
Hey, Secrets. I just had my business partner, Jeff, Herr, on. We have a company called Front Street Equity Partners, frontstreetep.com. And we started to talk about some of the things that we look for in brands, some of the common threads that we see as we are advising different brands. We talked about the LMS. We went deep into LMS, actually. We started to just kind of hit on what a learning management system is, how we help with that, but how a brand should really be thinking about that to help their franchisees from the get-go. So that was an interesting thing. And franchisees should be thinking about that too. You should have a good LMS as a franchisee, but you should also be having stuff for your employees in some type of learning management system. We talked about customer acquisition. There's a lot of different ways to get customers, but you need to be strategic with it. And how do we see it? And even as a brand, like, what are some of your first hires when you're thinking about marketing? Do you hire a CMO? Do you hire a director of marketing? Do you go fractional? How do you do it? We have a way that we do it, but we also talked about how you should probably do it as well. Something interesting towards the end of the conversation, we talked about like how we launch brands in big ways, but the big thing is, what do we do before a brand is ready to launch? And even after that, we talked about what do we do to get to know a brand to make sure that we want to partner with that brand. There's a lot of deep work that goes into that. And I think some of you will find it pretty fascinating, the things that we do and the level of detail that we get and the kind of trips that we take to really make sure we're getting involved with the right brands. But everyone, like, as you hear this with Jeff has an amazing amount of experience in starting and launching brands and helping brands in so many different ways. So franchisee, franchisor, new brand, I think you will find this session really interesting, and hopefully you'll learn a lot. All right, Jeff. So you and I have been having so many different conversations with different brands, and conversations about what we're doing to the brands that are in our portfolio at Front Street Equity Partners. And I think some of these conversations need to happen so more people in the franchise secrets world can listen to them and learn from them, whether they're franchise brands, they're emerging brands, or maybe they're thinking about franchising. And I think it's helpful for franchisees to kind of understand what happens behind the scenes and how that can help them as a franchisee. So we could go so many different directions.
Yeah, man.
Where do you want to start today?
Let's start with kind of, where the world of franchising is right now, and kind of where it's going. And, like you said, kind of like some of the things that we're doing. I mean, at the end of the day, we're having a lot of conversations with brands, and the one common thread with every single brand is they want to grow. Who doesn't want to grow? Growth is what it's all about. Like, why start a business if you don't want to grow the business? And so, kind of what we think about is all right, like, I think for us, I think it'd be kind of cool to talk a little bit about when we're talking to brands from a private equity standpoint, from an investment standpoint, from a strategic advisory standpoint, or if they want us to help them with like franchise development, we got to really kind of peel back the onion at first.
So to kind of set the stage for that, everything that you just mentioned are things that we do at Front Street to help brands. And there's different levels of that. At the end of the day, all brands need this help. It's not Front Street Equity Partners that will help all of these brands with these different things, but they all need help in these areas. And so as you heard Jeff kind of talk about those different areas. And I think I'd like you to repeat those again, because all brands should be getting help in these types of areas. Again, doesn't have to be Front Street. Most likely it's not, because we only work with certain brands, but these are things that every brand should be thinking about. So kind of rattle off those things again.
Sure. Well, I mean, my background has, I kind of got into franchising around like franchise development, sales process, the vetting process of bringing great candidates through that sales process and bringing them on board to great brands. And there's a lot of people that have been out there and have done that in their careers. I've worked with about 40 different brands, about 8,000 franchises over the last 15 plus years. And we know that is a pretty heavy duty component to any brand that wants to kind of scale and grow. That's where it starts. That's where it starts, but that's not where it stops. And that's kind of, I think when we talk to a lot of these brands and we talk to them about like, hey, what's most important for you right now? And, a lot of them have gone through that process of, creating an FDD, and they want to get out there and they want to award some franchise. And there are a lot of people out there that can help with that. But how we have evolved, how I have evolved, is that is the franchise sale, the onboarding of a new franchisee. That's not the end of the process. That's actually the beginning of the process. Franchise agreements today are typically like 10 years. So the sales component is pretty valuable, but it's, everything around like truly helping a brand grow and scale management is the most critical thing involved in creating enterprise value behind your concept. Because that's really what it's about. It's not how many franchises you sell. It's building equity in a brand and building a real brand. And so we help brands on the franchise development side. And we think about it a little bit differently than what's kind of out there in the marketplace today. There are companies out there, FSO is kind of like a big acronym that a lot of people kind of throw around. At the end of the day, that's kind of like franchise sales. And we think that each project, each brand is very unique. And so what the brand really needs is they want the best possible person to represent their brand, right? But the ability for them to actually get that person or that team on board, to get like the best of the best, it's pretty challenging. And so
it's impossible.
It's really impossible, and at the end of the day, I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is talent, like talent and teams and contractors and people that are real ninjas. That's the most important thing that a brand really can do, is surround itself with the best talent. And we just kind of have the ability on the franchise development side to bring literally the best talent to a project and then help manage that talent and that sales process with like all of our experiences. But we realized with putting together Front Street that we have to be way more than just franchise development. It's key, it's crucial. We have the experience. We know how to bring things to market. We know how to get traction. We know how to bring the right people. We know how to build the right tools for success on that level. But where we think that, kind of the FSO model fails, or not fails, but doesn't really kind of take to the next level is everything kind of after the sale. And, optimizing a business, optimizing unit economics, optimizing marketing strategies to increase the customer base of a business, to get those new customers of a brand to repeat the service or the purchase of whatever it is. and to turn these customers kind of into lifelong customers. Technology, each brand is going to need to have a real operating system, a real technology stack, whether it's POS or whether it's a CRM or whether it's a learning management system. Operations, finance is a big thing. Reporting, dashboards, analytics. Where we kind of, when we kind of wanted to think about kind of what does the marketplace need today that just doesn't exist? It's this combination of layers of assistance around franchise development, but then real strategic advisory, like basically being a board of directors to kind of help them really build this brand and optimize this brand and scale it in a very thoughtful way. And that is really kind of like, I think, where we are extremely unique in what we can offer a brand. It's yes, we can bring the heaviest firepower necessary and tools and everything around franchise development. But then we want to be in the trenches as strategic advisors to really kind of help them grow this business. And when you kind of have those two layers put together, then most brands are kind of they're going to need like maybe even a third layer. And that's our investment arm. Is you got to have great people. There's no question. If you think about a brand today, like if they could fully stack out a layer of talent, they all would. But the reality is emerging brands, they have a budget that they have to work with. And so, we kind of said, look, we don't always want to invest in every brand that we're helping with franchise development or advisory, but we have to have that third leg to the business so that we can make sure that the brand is scaling in a thoughtful manner. So today, what Front Street is it's three different layers, it's three different companies, but it's really kind of one solution. It's franchise development, strategic advisory, and investment.
So, and I think this is for brands. Every brand will need this at some point. Different stages of growth. You don't need all of this. You don't need the best or one of the top five, in franchise development on your brand if you have 0 franchisees today and you're going to have 3 by the end of the year. Like it would be this, 1, you wouldn't get them. 2, even if you could afford them, it would be a complete waste of money. So this all depends on the stage of growth that you're in and how fast you want to grow. Because one of the things we were just talking about too before we started recording, we were actually on a call with one of our fractional CMOs, and you made a comment about the worst thing that a franchise can do is get a franchisee and really not know how to support them. Like, okay, we got a franchisee, now what? And then you're building the brand, building the franchise model around that franchisee. You go into your first training, you're like, oh, I'm just going to let them know what I did. And then your training 5 years from now will look a lot different when you're bringing on franchisee 100 or 200. We're talking about with strategic advisory, having a training for that first franchisee like it was franchisee number 200. So because you're going to grow quickly to that through the franchise development arm of it. So, as you brands out there thinking about and learning from this podcast, this is what we're talking about are emerging brands that want to have exponential growth the right way. So you're not building the ship at sea so things don't implode, because that's what happens with brands that don't have the guardrails in place and don't have strategic advisory from people who have been there, done that. That thing will fall apart. And that's what you don't want.
That's exactly right, man. I mean, whenever I talk to a brand, I've been saying this for 10 years in a row, and I've talked to thousands of brands. And the one thing that I always say is and it's kind of a joke, and it usually gets a laugh, but I'm actually really serious. Like, first thing I tell people is the first rule of franchising is don't franchise your business, because I have seen so many brands go through the process. Anybody can call up a franchise attorney and get an FDD, but that doesn't make you ready to franchise your business. And most of the, there's like, I don't even know what the statistics are. I know we're going to IFA here in about a week, but I'm interested to see what it is. But the number that seems to be floating out there in the world is there's about 4,000 franchise brands, right? Give or take. That sound about right?
Yep.
So that number, continues to kind of tick up, but like, what would be a really interesting stat to look at is not how many new concepts get an FDD and are now a franchise brand, one of those 4,000, but how many exited? How many franchisors came to the conclusion that I need to unwind this. It's not working. I need to liberate these franchisees, and that number is probably, that number is always going to be there as well. And what I mean by like getting stuck is, I mean, we were on a call recently, and you actually heard, like, when you talk to brands about, how did you get into franchising? The one thing that I commonly hear all the time is that, they have a very successful business, a corporate business, whether it's, one territory, multiple territories covering a whole market. If it's brick and mortar, maybe they have multiple locations. So many times I've heard a franchisor say to me that the reason they got into franchising is that people really love their service, they love their product, they love their brand, and they said, "Hey, can I become a franchisee? Are you franchising?" And that is really how I think a lot of franchisors get into it. That's the stories that I hear over and over again is, I just had this thing. I was making, it was very, it was a profitable business. I've been able to scale it. People loved it. And they asked me if I want to get in, if they could get in. And then what they do is they go to a franchise attorney and they get this document. And then, the next thing you know it, they kind of have a franchisee, but they never really took the time necessary, but mainly because they just didn't know. What they didn't know was, how do you really kind of package up a franchise? Because, operating your own corporate business and operating a franchise, these are two completely separate businesses. And the reason that I use this term of like people getting stuck is once you kind of have a few franchisees, they're calling you saying, "I need this," or "Wouldn't it be great if we had that?" or "Who do I talk to about this?" And if they had spent the time up front actually like building out all of these pieces, they end up kind of just constantly chasing their tail. And they're always playing from like a defensive position instead of being proactive and playing from an offensive position where you say, "Hey, here are the tools that we built for you as a franchisee." I mean, the first thing that I think that every franchise company needs, they got to have a learning management system.
No, let's talk about that. Like, what are some of the basic things that a new franchisor should have? So think about this. And we're talking to a couple of them right now. One of them, really good experience in franchising. One of them, no experience in franchising, a really cool model. They kind of both need the same thing. All brands need some of the basic stuff. So talk about like some of those basic things that any like brand new and established franchisor should have, and this should be on their checklist of things that they should be executing as a franchisor.
Sure. Well, if you think when a new franchisee comes on board, kind of the first thing they're going to go into is they're going to go into some level of like training and education, right? They bought the franchise and they learned a lot. They learned a lot about it in the sales process in that funnel. But now that they're an actual franchisee, they have to they have to really understand of, how they're going to operate this business. They need training, they need education, they need resources, right? And so a franchisor has to be able to build, they have to be able to build a container for the things that a franchisees are going to need. And the first thing is just, how do we operate this business, right? How do we get customers? How do we operate this business? How do you hire employees? How do you train employees? And I think that every franchisor out there needs to have a learning management system. It's called LMS. And there are some great vendors that are out there that actually will walk hand in hand over a series of plus or minus 12 weeks with a brand to actually build that learning management system. It's kind of like really the kind of the central universe, central nervous system of a franchise business. That is where they are going for everything that they need. If you think about it, like people think you just need like an operating manual. Well, every car has an operating manual, right? But and it's probably in your glove box or it's in your trunk. Like, how many people have actually, when you needed to know something about your car, you actually go to the operating manual? You don't. You probably go to YouTube and you type in like how to fix a flat tire, right? You're not going to read how to do that in an operating manual. And so that's essentially what an LMS becomes for a franchise system, is that, yes, you need an operating manual technically, but like, it's really like, how do I do everything? That needs to kind of be the resource that's there. The next thing
with LMS, let's just dive a little bit deeper in that, because we have someone that helps our brands help implement that. It's not just like, hey, here's an LMS, go do it. So like,
right.
Just dive a little bit deeper in that. Like, how are we helping our brands with that? And what does that look like? Maybe the finished product or some of the pitfalls that brands, fall into and overcome.
So here's the deal with the Franchise Tribe Mastermind. It's full of a bunch of successful franchisees across many different industries, many different brands, and you get to be a part of that. Now, if you've had any level of success in franchising, you've probably been around top performing Z's in your current brand. So think about that. And if you could do that with 40 plus different brands, industries, franchisees, that's the value in the mastermind. I bring in some of the best speakers in the world. We talk about some topics that will never be talked about anywhere else. So if you're interested in being a part of a group like that, check out franchisetribe.com.
Sure. So yeah, I don't know if we want to mention specific,
Let's not mention names, or people or brands or anything like that, but we'll give the listeners some help.
So you're right. You got to have an implementer. This is not just like software that you purchase and then you just kind of put it all together yourself. It's the companies that provide these LMS systems and software really are going to work with that brand to kind of build it all out and to make it, and to put it on brand. So it actually looks, it's like white labeled for specifically that brand, but they're going to walk them through about a 12-week process to get the right amount of content in the right places within the LMS. And they're using, obviously, they've replicated this so many times with so many brands that they kind of know what's needed. In order to make sure, though, that process is right, not every LMS system really is an expert in the world of franchising, right? Now, they might have helped some other franchisors build an LMS, but they're in the LMS business, right? And the brand wants to create this system of content for their franchisees, but an emerging franchisor might not even know what's necessary, what needs to go wherever. So like one of the things that we do is we put a project manager on this that truly understands the needs of a franchisee and a franchise system to kind of be that extra layer of communication between the brand and the LMS provider. And what you get with that is you end up getting a better work product. And that project manager is going to make sure that it's delivered on time. You don't want this to stretch on and on and on. And that way, at the end of the day, you want to have the best product that you can put, together. And I think that recipe of putting one of our people as a project manager in between the franchisor and the LMS company ends up with the best result.
So let's say someone
yeah.
didn't have, like, again, most people aren't working with us, so they don't have access to our project manager to help them implement to be that kind of go between the implementer and the franchisor to have a great LMS for franchisees. So they don't have that. What would you do? Would you go and find someone that has done it before and ask and hire them on a one-off project to help implement the LMS at that particular brand? Or would you just kind of work with that implementer at the LMS software company alone?
Yeah, I mean, if you're an emerging brand, I think that you got to be a part of a network of other people that are in the franchising world. I mean, that you can't do it on your own, for sure. I mean, but the good news is about the franchising world is that the community is very open, it's very sharing, and at the end of the day, we might even have competitors, but we're all rooting
That's true
for the world of franchising, right? So I think that if I'm a franchisor, if I'm an emerging concept and I'm like, oh my God, LMS, I don't even know what he's talking about, learning management system. I think that it's very important for these folks to be a part of a network. So like mastermind, like your mastermind, I think like that's going to tap them into a community of people that they could reach out to and say, do you have an LMS? Who do you use? How much do you pay for it? What was the process of implementation? If you could go back in time, would you have done it differently? I think that's important. I do think that I think that also if you're going to be in the world of franchising, and you're going to be a franchisor, then I am a big proponent. You just got to join IFA. You've got to be a member of the organization in franchising that is looking out for your best interests. And IFA, there are so many things that come up throughout the year where, they are fighting tooth and nail for the world of franchising in Washington, DC. And really kind of trying to protect just the overall industry of franchising. And so I think that for the cost associated with joining IFA, it's just a no-brainer. I don't know how somebody could be in franchising and not be a part of the International Franchise Association, in my opinion.
You got to be in the right network. And so IFA, you absolutely should be a part of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, because the other thing too is that in addition to like masterminds, like once you are part of IFA, then you get access to their whole vendor network.
Yep.
And you get access to other members that are at IFA, and you get access to go to conferences that the IFA hosts, some of which are even for emerging franchisors. So you can, if you're looking at like, where do I start? If you are already a franchisor, you got to join IFA. But that's kind of step one. They got a big conference in a week. If you're in the world of franchising, you should be at that or other conferences that they have. Tap into that network, and you're going to find that every time that you reach out to somebody, they're going to reach back out to you. That's just how the community works. But then I think, I do believe that you should also be a part of like a mastermind where there's other people just like you trying to figure it out. And then if you want to kind of go to the next level, then that's where we kind of come in, right? Like, let's have a conversation about where you are today, where you want to go, and if there's a way that we can work together.
So there's different levels of this, and it's join the IFA, get for the network. I mean, they have a lot of good stuff that they put out, but start networking when you're in groups like that. Lane Fisher, he's got Springboard and Unconference. That's a great place to go and network, get to know people. They have a Facebook group. My Facebook group, Franchise Secrets, franchisesecretsgroup.com. get in there. People are so helpful in there, and I don't let people pitch in there. So it's a real helpful group, not a bunch of people trying to pitch stuff.
Right.
And then the level above that is my mastermind at $2,000 a month. It's month to month. It's scalablefranchise.com, and you'll be able to find out information on there. You get into a group of, I like month to month type stuff. I set this up month to month. That way people, if they're getting value, they stay. If they're not, they stop or pause. It doesn't matter. Be in it as long as you're getting value. I don't like to lock people into the mastermind part of it in a long-term contract, because they just need to get the value. Sometimes they just need, a few months to be able to make some really good decisions and to get the right connections. And that's fantastic. So it sounds like a lot of money, 2,000, but that's probably the least expensive way to get networked with the right people. And that you're getting, what you're getting. When you post something in the Facebook group, you'll get advice, but even me, I don't even know who's giving what advice and why they're giving it. In other words, like, are they giving advice? Are they giving advice to somebody because they're getting a kickback in a way? I've seen that happen. Last week it happened. I'm like, I know why you're doing that, because you're getting a kickback. Nobody else knows that. And I hate that stuff, but that stuff happens. So you want to get into a trusted network, and you can build that yourself by just getting with some other emerging brands, and you guys are doing stuff together. Have a call once a week, and then learn from each other. But I think, like what Jeff said, is very true. And then you can just go up the payment ladder, and depends on how much advice you want to get. But there's all kinds of ways to grow your brand, and you can waste a lot of money too. Just word of caution out there, naming no names. I was talking to a franchisor the other day, unsolicited. They're like, Eric, did you know that I paid almost six figures to have somebody help me with X, Y, and Z? I'm like, no, how's it going? Horrible. Everything they say we should be doing, we've already done. And the worst thing about it is they're locked into a 12-month contract and can't do a thing about it. There are places out there where, 6 figures, you'll get way more in value out of that investment. And there's places out there that will sell you a 6-figure type program where it's a complete waste. You need to be around people that can let you know who are the sharks out there and who are the people that are really actually helping you. And I'll say this, I've seen Jeff spend way too many hours with people on the phone, giving them amazing advice.
Yeah.
Free. We got to stop that, by the way. But that goes to franchising, man. You and I grew up in it. When we first started, we were competitors. We've been on the same side of things at times. We've been competitors at times. Like, some of our best friends are our competitors, but we're good friends with everybody. And that's the beauty about the franchising world. So I don't know where I was going with that, but where do we want to go next?
I mean, that's just to kind of dovetail off that. I mean, I have heard so many battle scar stories from brands that we've talked to. I mean, that's really kind of where, like, the whole idea of real strategic advisory for franchisors is just having a real guide dog there. Like, when you're looking at a vendor contract, like, no, I'm not going to lock myself in for 12 months. Or how do you even understand the value of the work product that you're going to end up with? I mean, most people find out at the end of that process that they weren't happy with the work product, but they didn't have somebody with not the knowledge to kind of help them navigate through that piece. And so, I mean, I hear that very commonly.
So we were talking about, what does every new ZOR need? And we made it through LMS.
We made it through LMS.
Next on the list?
Yes. Put a check in that box. The real next thing is that the lifeblood of any business is going to be customers, right? You got to generate revenue if you're a business to pay your employees and make a profit. And the thing one of the things that I also commonly hear with emerging franchisors, and they're really proud to tell me this, which is great, but like, that's not going to help a franchisee, is they say, you say, kind of, how do you get customers? And they're like, what are you doing right now on marketing to drive more revenue, to drive customer acquisition? And they say to me, that's the best part. I don't spend any money on marketing. I'm like, okay, well, yes, that's why it took you 10 years to get your business, from the garage to, out of the garage to where it is today. And yes, you maybe are able to operate a business through peer-to-peer marketing, meaning your customer base is willing to share it with others and you can scale it that way. And you don't have to put money into social or digital or PR or whatever it is. But when you have a franchisee that's going to be opening up in a new market, they don't want to take 10 years to get to where you got. That's the whole point of buying a franchise is the systems around that. So that's a big piece of what a franchisor is going to need. They are going to need marketing tools. They're going to need, whether, on the software side, maybe that's a loyalty type program. A CRM is mandatory. You got to be communicating with your customer base. You have to have campaigns with your customer base. So, I think you kind of start with like software, but then you need strategy. You need real strategy around how to connect customers to your brand. And that is going to need content. That's going to need branding. That's going to need creative. That's going to need copy and like real strategies, of how a new franchisee is going to launch their business and get traction with new customers and drive them into the door. And so that is something that I think a lot of brands really lack, is a real marketing strategy, and real people, specialists, contractors, agencies, whatever you want to call it, that can kind of help that franchisee or that franchise system, get out of the blocks quickly and drive customers through the door in a unique way. And so I think that is something that, there's a lot of energy spent around, is customer acquisition. And once you acquire that customer, how do you turn them into a customer for life?
This is not an easy one too, because this is something that so many people think like, oh, I'll outsource this because this marketing agency says they're really good at it. And what most marketing agencies are really good at is marketing their agency. Like many marketing agencies, like they are better at marketing their agency as the solution than they are at having the solution. And I would imagine some of the listeners right now are kind of laughing because that's been their experience. It is really hard to find the specialists out there, the contractors out there that are ninjas at the thing that they are so good at, better than anybody else. And they're not jack of all trades. Like they are specialists, and that's what they're good at. And they are hard to find.
They are. And you can't outsource everything, right? I think that, how we think about it is, we've talked a lot about like layers today, but we want to help our brand source a director of marketing that is going to be inside the brand, right? And we think of a director of marketing as
not a CMO. Manager. Don't help the brands with a CMO.
No, they can't afford it, right? They can't, like, if you look at a mature brand, they have a CMO, they have an EPV, they have an EVP of digital marketing. They have God knows how many vice presidents, God knows how many director level marketing people, community managers. Yeah, that's a mature system, right? But an emerging concept can't do that. They can't just go out and hire all these people, but they absolutely, an emerging brand is going to need a director of marketing in-house. Now, what we do is we have also sourced the agency specialists in each and every category, right? So that does become more project-based. It is non-committal in the sense that it is kind of like month to month. But these are real specialists that you wouldn't hire internally because you can't afford it. But they're also not generalists. They actually specialize in one particular thing, and so they can be brought in on a project. Now, the next layer of what we add on the marketing side is our C-level talent, our fractional C-level talent that are going to be more about strategy and branding, but really understands how to work with an agency specialist on a project and work with the internal director of marketing, once again, that we call like a project manager. And now when you start thinking about a director of marketing and, specialist for specific, agency specialist for specific projects, and then now a fractional CMO, when you layer in Front Street strategic advisory, basically now as an emerging franchise brand, you have talent as if you're 100 times bigger than you are.
I think I've seen some stuff around fractional C-level people out there, and I've looked into some of it because I've been on the hunt for some of these, and we have some great talent. But as I was looking for talent out there, I would get introduced to weak talent or people that would say, I'm a fractional CEO, fractional CMO or whatnot. I started to look at it. I'm like, these people aren't anywhere close to what I was looking at. So when we say fractional C-level people, these people have been in the trenches. They've built marketing departments for franchise organizations. They just didn't spend a year at a brand with a title. Like, these people in the trenches, experience making decisions, got their hands dirty, and are leaders.
That's right. Yeah, that's why it's so important to have somebody, a strategic advisor, kind of like help you find the right people, vet out the right people, communicate with these people. I mean, the last thing you want to do is get on a call and the fractional CMO says, okay, what do you need my help, to do? And the franchisor either can't communicate that properly or takes them down a tangent on something they don't really need. Like, that's what it's all about. It's about really trying to get the best result for every project and putting the best people there. But you're going to need somebody that's been there before and can help connect you to the right people. I mean, that's what it's really all about. You got to have access. We talk a lot about access. Like, that's what your mastermind is doing. That's what your Facebook group is doing. That's what advisors do. They give you access that can help you get from where you are now to where you need to be. And the idea that a franchisor can kind of do that on their own without that level of access, it's possible, but it's virtually improbable.
And you probably want to grow pretty slow because you're going to be building the ship at sea.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, the worst thing that you can do is try to scale, hire an FSO that actually can sell, which most of them can't, but let's say they can. And let's say the ones that can sell take you on, which most of them won't until you have a decent team in place. But let's say all that's true. You sell a bunch of franchisees that you weren't ready to, and and now you are sitting as a franchisor with a bunch of franchisees that are not very happy, aren't going to open up location number 2. They're squatting on a bunch of territory, and your brand is not worth a whole lot, and you have a big headache and you can't really unwind it. Like, that's the worst. You don't want that. You would rather not sell many franchises, learn a little bit for a year or 2 or 3, and then realize what you don't know, put some things in place, learn the hard way, which is what most people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then when you're ready to grow, you've probably made some connections where you know who to bring in at the right time, whether it's Front Street or somebody else. Maybe it's the right CEO. Maybe it's another partner that has the experience. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Growing 1 or 2 franchisees at a time is one way to do it. Going with Front Street's another way to do it. By the way, if you're interested in Front Street or just kind of checking out the website, it's Front Street EP, like equitypartners.com, frontstreetep.com. Or if you just want to kind of get into the mastermind and look at the Facebook group, go to scalablefranchise.com. Jeff, I think we're about out of time. We got a brand that we've got to be on with in about 5, don't we?
Attention franchisors, if you are not bringing in many of the right franchisees, sales are slow. It's stealing too much of your time as a founder trying to award franchises to the right franchisee. There's a better way to do it. That's why I started the Franchise Sales Mentor. If you want to have access to the information, the techniques, the ways that the best franchise sales organizations are awarding franchisees, then you might want to check out the Franchise Sales Mentor. The reasons that franchisors join is because they want access. They want access to my Rolodex. They want access to my connections. They want access to shortcut both short-term and long-term success to increase enterprise value to their brand.
Yeah, I just texted him though to see if we could start at 1:15. So we got a little bit more time, but yeah, we can wrap it up. I mean, good sesh. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's important for franchisors to net. You got to start networking. You got to start having conversations with people, and you got to really put a lot of effort into building the engine that's going to help support franchisees.
And all of that takes time, like networking and learning. It takes time. This is the shortcut. Front Street's the shortcut. There's different types of shortcuts. And most of the time, the shortcut's not right for you for many different reasons. So we're showing you like Front Street takes the brands that will probably be slow growing brands and we'll turn them into something special in a short period of time. That's what we do at Front Street.
Once we launch.
Oh, there's a
but like we don't launch it until it's ready.
No. Right? Go talk about that a little bit.
We want to optimize the business before we take it to market. And we are really, really heavy on data and building out dashboards and really understanding the business fundamentals and bringing in the right teams. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we started this call by saying that every time that we talk to brands, the number one, thing that they say, the thread between them all, is they want to grow their business, right? And guess what? We're 100% aligned with when we're when we're investing in a brand, when we're advising a brand, when we're helping them with whatever, we're all aligned for that business to grow. We have the knowledge base of happens, when you grow and you weren't ready. We understand that, and we want to avoid those pitfalls. We also know how to build things so that when we do go to market, we can get traction. Traction is something that I talk about a lot. It's if you're going to go through everything to set it up the right way and launch it the right way, it's got to be with the goal to get traction. What traction is going to do, that's the growth curve, right? A lot of business kind of just grow in a linear fashion, kind of up to the right, over a long period of time. But what we're all really looking for is to launch the business, get it to a point where you get that inflection point where it can kind of hockey stick. But the preparation around go to market and how you package that, how you launch that, how you communicate around that, and the systems that you put in place are really going to dictate what happens after you're out into the marketplace.
Give us a sense of how many hours we have put into one of our brands in this process of getting them ready to launch.
Like collectively, between like all the people on the team. Oh my God. I mean, 1,000, 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours of manpower to get things right. It could be more than 1,000. It's not going to be less than 1,000.
And that includes like deep thought, deep work, FDD stuff, calls with attorneys, calls with team members. I mean, that is not like, just fun, easy stuff.
That doesn't even include like all the time before right? You're partnered up. Like I could spend hundreds of hours on really understanding every single lever that we can pull to make something really work and to go out to market before we even have a relationship, like that. It's more than due diligence. It's really business mapping. And that's what's going to help the go-to-market process go quicker. But it also makes us more discerning about the projects that we can take on. We just can't do it without really understanding every single thing about the business. Like before we even have a relationship around franchise development, strategic advisory, investment with a brand, I could already be a franchisee of that brand. That's how much I know about that brand. Like I could be a franchisee tomorrow. I could open a location, whether it's service or brick and mortar, and I could do it because I know almost as I've assimilated as much information as humanly possible. And I don't know as much as the brand founder, but I definitely could go out and be a franchisee right then and there.
How much would you say the value of the information that we've given them? Let's say they walk at the last minute. They're like, we just don't want to do this for whatever reason. What's the value that they've received?
I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. Part of learning about a brand, right? If they have a product, that they're using, we want to understand. We want to have conversations with the suppliers of this product. We want to understand the supply chain. We want to think about how we're going to optimize the supply chain. How are we going to drive down the cost of goods? Like I've taken trips to manufacturers and put on the hairnet, like literally putting on the hairnet to understand the process of how this chemical is put together and packaged up and shipped out. Because I'm thinking like, okay, how are we going to drive down the cost of goods? How are we going to scale up? And so like the entire time going through that, I'm talking to the brand founder and brand owner of all the things that I'm thinking that we do to optimize the business around the supply chain. If that deal doesn't come together, man, that's a roadmap. and that's just, supply chain is just one thing. Like, oh my God, rebuilding all financial dashboards. Like we really, really, truly want to understand unit level economics.
And you do that, like you're genius at that. And you do that and you show the brand that like that, there's huge value in that. By the way, anybody that comes to us and starts looking at this you don't get all of that. Like this is down the process. It takes time to get to know each other and learn and whatnot. But you don't get all this just, because you're interested or we're interested. This is a relationship that is built over some time. It takes time to really do due diligence on both sides. So tons of value that a brand would get even if they didn't do anything with us. All right, man. I think we need to, I just got this text too. I just can't wait to tell you what just came through, but we'll do that offline.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. Man. Good chatting.
Let's do this again.
Good session.
All right, buddy. Cheers.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.
Hey,